He stood before the judge, a nervous black teen in a courtroom that felt cold and overwhelmingly white. His name was Davion, and he was on trial for a crime he swore he didn't commit. The judge, a man with a stern face and eyes that seemed to pierce right through him, looked down from his high bench. Davion's heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and injustice. His public defender had warned him. "Keep your head down. Answer yes or no. Don't show any emotion." But how could he not show emotion when his entire future was on the line? The prosecutor laid out the case with a chilling certainty. An armed robbery. A witness who identified Davion from a grainy security photo. Every word felt like another nail in his coffin. Davion could feel the weight of everyone's stares, the silent judgments, the assumption of guilt. He looked at the jury, a sea of indifferent faces. He glanced at his mother in the back row, her hands clasped in prayer, her eyes filled with a pain that mirrored his own. He felt invisible, a stereotype in a system that had already made up its mind. The judge adjusted his glasses, his gaze fixed on Davion. "Mr. Jones," he began, his voice echoing in the silent room. "The evidence presented against you is substantial. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Davion's throat went dry. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The words of his defender echoed in his head. "Do you want to say anything that can be used against you?" He felt trapped, silenced. He wanted to scream, to tell them they had the wrong person, to explain that he was at his grandmother's house, helping her with her garden when the robbery took place. But all he could manage was a weak shake of his head. The prosecutor smiled, a small, triumphant curl of the lips. It seemed like the end. The judge picked up his gavel, the final instrument of a fate already sealed. Davion squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. But the gavel didn't fall. Instead, the judge leaned forward, his expression softening ever so slightly. He looked directly at Davion, not as a defendant, but as a young man. "Son," he said, his voice now gentle, "I was once a young black boy in a courtroom just like this one, terrified and wrongly accused." The entire courtroom held its breath. The prosecutor's smile vanished. Davion's eyes flew open, locking with the judge's. It was a single sentence, but it shattered the tension. It broke through the prejudice. It changed everything. The judge wasn't just a figure of authority anymore. He was a man who understood. He saw Davion. He truly saw him. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited in Davion's chest, a tiny flame in the suffocating darkness. The judge wasn't looking down on him. He was looking out for him. "Now," the judge continued, his voice firm again but laced with a new understanding, "let's re-examine this evidence, shall we? Every piece of it." He turned his sharp gaze towards the prosecutor, starting with that grainy photograph and the single, uncorroborated witness. The shift in the room was palpable. It was no longer a foregone conclusion. It was a real trial. The judge began to meticulously pick apart the prosecution's case. He questioned the reliability of the witness identification, pointing out the poor lighting in the distance. He demanded to see the original, unenhanced security footage. He then turned to Davion's public defender. "Did you follow up on your client's alibi? Did you speak to his grandmother?" The defender, now energized by the judge's intervention, confirmed he had but was told it was just family covering for family. The judge frowned. "Hearsay, an assumption of no place here. Let's hear from the grandmother." Davion's grandmother was called to the stand. She was an elderly woman with a quiet dignity. She spoke with unshakable clarity about the day of the robbery, describing how Davion had spent the entire afternoon with her, planting petunias and repairing a broken fence. She even produced a photo on her old flip phone, time-stamped, showing Davion covered in dirt, smiling proudly next to the newly planted flower bed. The prosecutor tried to discredit her, but her testimony was sincere and unwavering. The judge listened intently, his expression unreadable but his focus absolute. For the first time, the jury started to look at Davion differently. They weren't just seeing a suspect anymore. They were seeing a grandson, a helper, a kid who liked to garden. The stereotype was cracking, replaced by the image of a real person. The judge's single sentence had opened a door, not just for new evidence, but for a new perspective. It forced everyone in that room to look beyond their assumptions. The judge then recalled the arresting officer and questioned him about the lineup procedure. It became clear that Davian was the only one in the lineup who even remotely matched the vague description given by the witness. The process had been suggestive, leading the witness to a conclusion rather than allowing for a fair identification. Piece by piece, the substantial evidence crumbled under the judge's careful scrutiny. The air in the courtroom, once thick with condemnation, now buzzed with doubt. Finally, after hours of re-examination, the judge looked at the jury. "The foundation of our justice system," he said, his voice resonating with authority and conviction, "is the presumption of innocence. It is not on Mr. Jones to prove he's innocent. It is on the prosecution to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that he is guilty. Based on what we have heard today, the inconsistencies, the lack of credible evidence, and a flawed identification process, I ask you, has that burden been met?" The jury deliberated for less than 20 minutes. The verdict came back. Not guilty. A wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled Davian's knees washed over him. He burst into tears, not of fear this time, but of overwhelming gratitude. His mother rushed to hug him, her own tears soaking his shoulder. Across the room, Davian's eyes met the judge's. The judge gave a slow, deliberate nod. It was a silent acknowledgement, a passing of the torch, a promise that justice, though sometimes blind, could also be made to see. As Davian and his mother left the courthouse, blinking in the bright sunlight of freedom, he understood the power of that one sentence. It wasn't just a revelation of the judge's past, it was a lifeline. It was a declaration that empathy could exist in the coldest of places, that one person's courage to speak their truth could change the course of another's life. The judge didn't just preside over the case, aimed to Bened. He didn't just apply the law, he applied humanity, and in doing so, he didn't just free an innocent boy. He restored faith in a system that so often feels broken. Davian would never forget the man who looked down from the bench, not with judgment, but with recognition, and in doing so, turned his whole world upside down for the better. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the power of empathy and justice. See you in the next video.